Hello, my name is Sierra Vargas, and today I will be discussing the life and influence of Josephine Baker, one of the most important entertainers of the jazz age. Josephine Baker was not only a singer and a dancer, but also an international celebrity who helped bring American jazz culture to Europe. And her story is important to the history of jazz because she represents how African American music, dance, and performance spread across the world during the early 20th century. So while jazz was developing in cities like New Orleans and Chicago, performers like Baker were introducing the culture to international audiences. So in this presentation, I will talk about her early life, how she began performing, her rise to fame in Paris, her musical career, and influential songs. The reason why I wanted to study Josephine was because I had actually heard her rendition of La Vie en Rose, which I love, and I listened to it from many different artists, but I really loved hers. It just sounded so authentic. So when I saw her pop up under artist to cover for this topic, I knew it had to be her. So let's get into it. Josephine Baker was born Frida Josephine McDonald in St. Louis, Missouri, and she grew up during a time of extreme racial segregation in the United States, which was known as the Jim Crow era. So her childhood was very difficult. Her family struggled financially, and Baker experienced poverty from a very young age. And because of these circumstances, she had begun working at a young age as well, including working as a domestic servant for white families. So she eventually left school early because she needed to help support herself. So even though her childhood was challenging, Baker showed an early interest in music and performance. She loved to dance and often entertained people in the streets and neighborhoods around St. Louis. She had that big personality. These early performances helped her develop the expressive and energetic style that would later make her famous. So her early life is important to understand her later success because it shows how far she traveled socially and culturally from poverty in American Midwest to becoming one of the most famous performers in the world. Josephine Baker began performing professionally as a teenager in traveling vaudeville shows. Vaudeville was a popular form of entertainment in the early 1900s, and it included comedy, music, dancing, and theatrical acts. Her mom was actually a vaudeville performer, so she's following in her mother's footsteps. Her big break came when she joined the Broadway production Shuffle Along in 1921, and this musical was extremely important because it was one of the first successful Broadway shows created and performed by African American artists. Baker originally joined the production as a chorus dancer, but her unique personality and comedic style quickly made her stand out. She often exaggerated movements and used humor in her dancing, which audiences loved. She later performed in another show called The Chocolate Dandies, which continued to showcase the African American musical talent on major stages. Through these productions, she gained valuable experience performing jazz-influenced dance and music, which prepared her for the international career that would soon follow. Josephine takes petty. In 1925, Josephine Baker moved to Paris, which completely changed her career. At that time, many African American artists were traveling to Europe because they found greater opportunities and less racial discrimination than the United States. She performed in a show called La Revue Negre, which celebrated jazz music, African American dance, and Black cultural expression. European audiences were fascinated by this new style of performance. And don't make fun of me for how I pronounced the word above the show. Baker quickly became a sensation. Her performances combined energetic dancing, theatrical expression, and of course, jazz music. One of her most famous performances featured the iconic banana skirt costume, which became a symbol of the Roaring '20s and the Jazz Age. During this time, Paris became one of the most important centers of jazz outside of the U.S., and Baker helped introduce European audiences to jazz culture and African American performance styles, making her one of the first truly international jazz era celebrities. Josephine Baker's performance style was very different from many performers of her time. Instead of focusing on only singing or dancing, she created performances that combined multiple elements of entertainment. So she was totally a triple threat, and she had a big personality and was not afraid to show it. First, her dance style was extremely energetic and expressive. Her movements were fast, playful, and sometimes exaggerated, which made her performances feel spontaneous and exciting, similar to the improvisational energy of jazz music. Secondly, Baker used comedy in her performances. She often made humorous facial expressions or exaggerated movements that made audiences laugh while still showcasing her dancing ability. Another important aspect of was the jazz music that accompanied her performances. So jazz bands frequently played during her shows, creating rhythms that influenced how she moved on stage. They went hand in hand. And lastly, Baker was known for her elaborate costume and stage designs. Her performances were visually dramatic and theatrical, which helped make her shows more memorable and unique. Together, all of these elements made her performances feel like a complete artistic experience that combined music, dance, and visual spectacle. So often I feel like great musicians have a film career as well as a music career, and Josephine was no different. So as Josephine's popularity grew, she expanded her career beyond stage performances and began working in film and recorded music. During the 1930s, she appeared in several films, including Zuzu and Princess Tam Tam. These films helped introduce her to even larger audiences and showed how influential she had become in European entertainment. In addition to acting, Baker was also a successful singer. She recorded many songs that blended jazz influences with French popular music styles. Her recordings were widely played in Europe and helped spread jazz-influenced vocal performance to international audiences. Through film and music recordings, Baker became one of the most recognizable performers of the era. Her influential music. So one of Baker's most famous songs is J'ai deux amours, released in 1931, and the title just means I have two loves, referring to her love for both America and Paris. The song became her signature piece and symbolized her identity as an international performer. Another popular song was La Tonkinoise, released in 1930. This upbeat song reflects the lively entertainment style of Parisian cabarets and music halls. Baker also performed American jazz standards such as Blue Skies and Bye Bye Blackbird. These songs were already popular in the United States, but her performances helped introduce them to European audiences. Through songs like these, Baker helped spread jazz music internationally and showed how American music styles could influence global entertainment. Her music often blended jazz rhythms, theoretical storytelling, and expressive vocal delivery, which made her performances memorable and distinctive. During World War II, Josephine Baker used her fame to support the French Renaissance against Nazi occupation. Because she was a well-known international performer, she was able to travel frequently and attend social events with political leaders and military officials. This allowed her to gather valuable information that could be used by resistance movement. In some cases, she even helped smuggle secret messages hidden in sheet music during her travels. How smart is that? Her work was considered extremely valuable to the French war effort. After the war, she was awarded several military honors by the French government for her bravery and contribution. Later in her life, Baker also became an activist, she became active in the American Civil Rights Movement, speaking out against racism and inequality. In the later years of her life, Josephine Baker continued to perform and remained a beloved public figure in France. Even though the entertainment world had changed since the 1920s, Baker's legacy and charisma kept audiences interested in her performances. In 1975, she celebrated 50 years in show business with a special anniversary show in Paris. The performance took place at the Bobino Theater and featured many famous guests and admirers who came to celebrate her long career in entertainment. The show was extremely successful and received standing ovations from audience and critics. However, only a few days after the performance, Baker suffered a cerebral hemorrhage. After being in a coma, she passed away on April 12th in 1975 at the age of 68. Because she had become such an important cultural figure in France, the French government honored her with a state funeral, something very rare for an entertainer. Thousands of people attended the ceremony to celebrate her life and contributions to music, performance, and culture. Her death marked the end of an extraordinary career, but her influence on jazz, entertainment, and civil rights continue to be remembered today. I'll go into that in the next slide. Josephine Baker's legacy extends far beyond her performances. She helped introduce jazz culture and African American artistic traditions to international audiences. During the Jazz Age, many American musicians traveled to Europe, but Baker became one of the most recognizable figures representing this cultural movement. She also broke racial barriers in entertainment. At a time when segregation limited opportunities for Black performers in the United States, Baker achieved worldwide fame and respect. Her influence can still be seen in music, dance, fashion, and performance art today. In 2021, she was honored by being inducted into the Pantheon in Paris, making her the first Black woman to receive this recognition. You go, girl. Josephine Baker still matters today because her career represents the intersection of art, culture, and social change. First, she helped create representation for Black performers on international stages. Her success challenged stereotypes and opened doors for future generations of artists. She helped spread jazz as a global cultural movement. Through her performances in Paris and other cities, jazz became recognized as an important artistic form around the world. Finally, Baker showed that entertainers could use their influence to support important causes, including civil rights and political freedom. Her life reminds us that music and performances have powerful cultural and historical impact. These sources help provide historical information about Josephine Baker's life, her role in the Jazz Age, and her influence on global culture. Thanks for listening.